Hi, and welcome to Maiden Voyage. I am so excited to be introducing all of you to Meghan Hultquist, who is an old colleague and friend of mine, and we're going to be interviewing her and talking to her today about getting on stage and opportunities for women who want to, they have a point of view, they have tips, they have techniques, they want to be presenters, and things have changed a little bit right now, and things have shifted in our marketplace where we're remote and we're online. And so today, we're not only going to talk about Meghan and all the amazing things she's accomplished, and she's going to share great tips and techniques and tricks with you guys, but we're going to lean into the idea of how can you become a thought leader in the current atmosphere we're in from a digital aspect.
Women face unique challenges, from glass ceilings at work to everyday personal stressors.
The Maiden Voyage podcast covers it all, offering tips and tricks for overcoming your struggles.
While this lady-hosted podcast focuses heavily on women's issues,
it's relevant for anyone who values self-improvement, equality, and badass inspiration.
We all navigate this journey together. Welcome aboard.
Meghan, thank you so much for taking the time very early on a Friday morning to chat with me and the mermaids.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie and team. It's awesome to be here. It's great to talk to you all. What a crazy week, right? What crazy times.
It's been insane. And I know somebody on our call this morning was like, happy Friday. And I was like, what's the difference?
I know. I thought of that this morning. That's my go-to for Friday mornings is happy Friday. And I'll tell you what, I am so grateful, as I'm sure you guys are, that, I'm healthy and I'm safe and I have a job and I've got some opportunities like this. But it feels like we're just short of wishing everyone a happy Friday.
Right, exactly.
But I think today we're gonna talk a lot about that, right? We're gonna break this open and talk about the fact that even though we are in this unprecedented time of crisis, there actually are still some opportunities for those who are driven enough, to want to leverage this and find opportunities hidden amongst the chaos that's happening out in the world.
And I love that point of view, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to run with it.
Awesome.
We are here today and into my weekend. So before we get going into all of those juicy topics, I just want to share a little bit about, because you've always interested me in your kind of rise up in marketing from when I first met you a few years ago, because you're so smart and so intelligent and well poised. And then I came to find out that you went to law school and marketing was not your intended, if you will, career. However, landed in such a magnificent spot. Now you're an agency owner with your husband and knocking it out of the park, right? So maybe you could just share with our listeners a little bit kind of how you got into marketing so they can get a little basis of, who you are.
Sure. I mean, again, thank you so much. You guys are always so kind. You're right, though, that my route into marketing, into what has become my dream career, was rather circuitous. I actually started in law school and I dropped out. I hated it. And I found myself, like a lot of young adults, I think today, I found myself moving back in with my parents, a college graduate, no job, no opportunities on the table. I had a political science and philosophy degree, which doesn't get you too much in terms of finding a job. So I kind of stumbled into marketing. I started working for an attorney for a small law firm, and he needed, some administrative support, as well as some help with the website and marketing. So I kind of dove in and I discovered marketing and I just fell in love. So I've been doing it ever since. I got a couple agency jobs and I've absorbed everything I possibly could. And now, the last 18 months, I've joined my husband full time as an agency owner. So we've been running HQ Digital out of our home in Northwest Ohio for about the last 18 months. So yeah, it's been tremendous. I love marketing. I love the folks in marketing. It's just such a nice group to work with. It's just exciting. I don't know. It's an exciting industry. It's exciting projects, exciting clients. So I'm really lucky. I found what I love. I'm very fortunate.
You are, and I agree with you because I came from a corporate background before I joined the inbound agency life, and which I've only been in for 6 or so years now. It is a whole different ballgame. Working with creatives is the most enjoying and frustrating thing that I've ever done. So you do work remotely, as you said, from your house, and we all do at Impulse Creative as well. I'd say 90% of our staff is remote as well. Right now we're 100%.
Yep.
So what observations can you share or tips that you can lean and have our audience lean into, because a lot of people are shifting, not only digital, like work from home, but like technology and Zoom conferencing. Like there's a lot out there that I think a lot of our listeners may not have been utilizing before the last 15 days.
Yeah. It's fascinating, this whole thing. I've been working at home myself full time for about 4 years. And before that, I was about half and half. So it's interesting, all of a sudden folks are asking me for tips on what's been my normal, for years. And, what I've seen is, I think a lot of what everyone else is seeing, this is new to many people. So some of my advice is for everyone to just take a deep breath, try 4 seconds in and 4 seconds out, and realize that everybody's in the same boat. And this is new for a lot of folks, but it's not new for everyone. And so there's a lot of resources you can depend on. There's all kinds of tips that you can pick up. I also feel like, one good thing for me, at least from my perspective, that's coming out of this is I actually think it's going to accelerate the adoption curve for a lot of these digital technologies. I know we've all been using things like Zoom and Slack and Skype and Google Hangouts and Facebook Messenger and all these different digital platforms for years. Yeah. And they've been available, but the adoption, that's how adoption tends to go with these technologies. It's not until you absolutely need to that the majority kind of comes along, and all of a sudden, the market's hand has been forced a little bit, and suddenly you have teachers and professors and CEOs and all these folks who've never, really adopted these things. They're just all in. So it's really cool to see, we've all kind of known in the marketing world, this stuff works, and they're great platforms. Right. You are able to connect and get a message out, even though, you're from within your own home. So I like to see the acceleration of adoption. I think that's really cool. And then another thing, looking for the silver linings, which I feel like is just a great survival strategy right now, is, part of my role as an agency owner has been like establishing myself as a thought leader and a speaker. And I had a great year last year. You and I talked about that in the summer, that, 2019, it feels like was just such a great year for women in particular digital marketing. We had all these opportunities just suddenly, the door just got blown wide open, and conferences were aching for women to come and fill these roles and share their expertise and share their unique perspective. And I feel like as women now in 2020, we're kind of like, well, what the heck happened? It was our year last year, and now all of a sudden we're just kind of thrown for a loop. So one thing that I'm noticing is that even though that physical stage opportunity has kind of vanished, a lot of these conferences have had to cancel, trade shows have ended, there is an opportunity for folks in digital marketing, folks in all industries really, and particularly for women, to actually use this time to establish themselves as thought leaders. We're all sitting at home with all this extra time. We've got all these digital technologies. I feel like, I've talked to so many women in the last year who are interested in establishing themselves and starting to build a personal brand and build a following. This, girl, is the time, right? Like, you have all the time in the world. Take some time, take advantage of this time at home to really craft a strategy for when we're through this, how you're going to explode as the next thought leader on the scene. I really think there's good opportunities to do this in this digital always world we're in now.
I'd love to dissect that a little bit. So if I were someone, because when you and I did talk this past summer, when Jen and I had the opportunity to chat with you at Inbound, I even said personally, like, I wanted to get on the stage at Inbound this upcoming year, which I don't know if that's happening, and deadlines, etc. But if they're going to be on, we hope so. We don't know. But I would love to, as again, somebody who's interested in doing that, like, what do I do first? Because the idea of this explosion of opportunity for women, I fully agree with you. Like, 2019 was our year. We did a podcast about it too, like all the kick-ass things that happened for women in 2019. I don't think 2020 is going to be anyone's year, male or female. Like,
I know, COVID year.
It's not even anybody's year. Yeah. But like you said, there are ways that we can capitalize. So, but it feels like an undertaking. Where do I start? Where do I like begin to put pen to paper?
Yeah, great question. Because I mean, it's overwhelming, right? The digital space is huge. And I think with that in mind, the right first step is to find the right channel for you. I think that everyone that's been at home has spent the last 2 weeks kind of playing around with different technologies, figuring out what room they should be in, figuring out, do I need earbuds? Do I need, an earpiece? What do I do? The next step after you've got your platform is to figure out what channel are you going to use. Do you want to distribute your message on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is? Find your channel and listen first. It doesn't work particularly well when you're a thought leader to just go out and start blasting your own message. And we as marketers, we know that, right? Like that's just not what you do. But for non-marketers, the analogy that we all like to use is going to a cocktail party, right? So if you go to a cocktail party and you're meeting a bunch of new folks for the first time, you typically have to take some steps to engage them a little bit first before you just start blabbing on about yourself and your expertise. And that analogy goes on to say, like, if you do go out and just spread your own message and talk about yourself and your expertise, people will politely listen for a few minutes. They'll give you a smile and a nod, maybe a like on social media. But after a while, they just start to drown you out, right? Because they are interested. Humans are self-interested creatures. If you don't have something of value to give to them, they're going to kind of become disinterested. So the way I recommend that people combat that is just by doing some social listening first. As you're crafting your ideas and coming up with what you want to talk about and, educating yourself by reading and watching videos in your industry, do some active listening on the channel of your choice. Every network has its own nuances and social, and rules. For instance, on LinkedIn, if you comment and like something, everybody's network sees it. On Facebook, that's not the case. So take some time and actually identify, who are the thought leaders in your space? What are they talking about? How do folks engage with them? And then actually get yourself involved in the conversation. Engage a little bit first, and then you can start to build your own platform and start talking. So that's step one of a fairly complicated process, I'd say.
But I think there's a lot of like subtasks within that step, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I've even heard you say, create a content calendar. Really? I mean, you didn't say that, but like, what do you want to talk about? Who do you want to be on this platform? Like, you need to sit down and put the thought up front as to like, this is my message. And like, how am I going to dissect this main message with lots of smaller messages that are all cohesive? Like it's a big thing, but I love that listening, right? Taking the minute to pause, which I have written all over my walls because I'm often just to jump, right? To like pause and really understand who you are, where you are, and what's going on around you before you jump in.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a little bit, second nature for those of us in marketing, right? You have to start with a strategy first. You can't just, you can, but if you just launch into blasting posts and videos and things like that, you may get some quick wins, but if you want like a long, cumulative set of wins, you really need to be strategic. You start as you would start any marketing endeavor, right? You need to identify who you're talking to, what they care about, and then, educate yourself, figure out what area, what specialized area can you provide value in? And as you figure that out, do some active social listening, figure out the subtopics in that area that you want to explore, and then figure out, what's the best way for you to get that message out.
I love that. You made note about, and I'm going to take exactly from something that you said, so because I'd love for you to dive deeper into it, adopting new communication rhythms and norms. And so I like communicating remotely. I love that you use that term, communicating remotely. Mind blown for a lot of people. But what kind of things can we do? What kind of new rhythms and norms should we adopt when we're trying to like launch ourselves into like a platform or really just a meeting in general? I think you have some great ideas you could help share.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think everyone that's, stuck at home now is starting to figure out that although we have these great digital technologies, it's simply not the same as being in person, in a meeting in someone's office. And so you do have to adapt your communication style and your communication rhythm. The number one tip that I have is to be on video, which we're doing here. And it's not, believe me, I know, I've been doing it for years. It's not the most comfortable, natural thing that there is. It's a bit awkward. But one thing that you lose when you're not face to face is this aspect of nonverbal communication. When you're just instant messaging back and forth, or you're emailing, you don't have much context or tone. And so with video, you gain back some of that nonverbal communication. You can see someone's smile, or the smile in someone's eyes, or hand motions, or someone is stressed out and what their posture looks like. So I think using video is probably most important. And then along with that, there's some etiquette, right? One tip I had gotten from an agency a few years ago was, don't just hit the video call whenever you feel like it. Give people a little bit of a heads up, because not everyone is comfortable being on video, particularly 24/7. And so give somebody a heads up, ask if it would be okay to connect by video.
I'm the greatest defender of that. I'm just like, I'm calling you now. And I call them, and then I Slack them and say, I'm calling you. And I know you're there. Answer.
I can attest to that. Yeah.
But we are a video first agency. So internally, we're all on video at 8:45 in the morning. Unless you, and as you should be, stepping away from your desk for moments here and there, I expect everyone's with their right mind clothed and ready for a call. But externally, yes, I think, you have to ensure that people are prepared. Because we've been in meetings where people are like, oh, I didn't know I was on video, and it immediately gets turned off.
Oh my gosh, have you seen the headlines about one poor woman in particular was on the toilet and her camera was on, right? So that's a great tip, right? Is okay, familiarize yourself with the technology and the tools that you're using. I wish I could show you guys, but I have a little laptop camera cover. It's just a teeny tiny piece of plastic, costs like 99 cents. You just slide it on over when you're not on camera, and it just gives you the greatest peace of mind. You didn't even realize you were missing. So investing in some tools like that, if you don't have a laptop camera cover, use a Post-it note or a piece of tape. It just provides some peace of mind. It guarantees that you're only on camera when you want to be. And then when you actually get into the meeting, there are some rhythms that you need to change. One thing my husband and I were just noticing with some folks that are new to video is that, it's not the same as a live conversation. If you agree with something, for instance, if you're a person that in an in-person meeting is always chiming in and always giving their 2 cents, you may have to pull it back a little bit and start to nod, because when you're in a group like this, it's just simply impossible that everyone in the room gets to weigh in on every single thing. So kind of choose your words wisely, right? Look for nonverbal cues when to jump in. And yeah, just keep in mind that, it's just a different media type the whole time that you're meeting.
It's funny you should say that. I did a Zoom, and I think we're all realizing this with our families. Those of us who've been Zooming with our families, we're like, my aunt was hollering and my mom was hollering. My cousin and I are talking under them, but we can usually it's madness ensued for 45 minutes. What's wrong with the button? How do you work the button? And you're like, oh my Lord. And so I think offering grace to those also who aren't familiar with the technology, for those of us who are, is something that we all need to work on as well, because for those of us who do it every day, it's the button on the left, you can hit mute if you don't want to be speaking right now, or if you're chewing like a cow, or all of those really fun things.
Yeah. I think that that's super important to keep in mind, is there is a learning curve, and some of us, there's just shifts across industries and across generations. Some of us have grown up on this technology. Some of us have been using it for years, and some folks are just getting into it for the first time. So yeah, being patient and understanding that there's a learning curve, I think will go a long way. And then, you'd asked about some other tips. I guess I always go back to this tone thing. I feel like a couple of years ago in business, it was very taboo to use an emoji, right? You wouldn't do that. It's a business communication, right? It's very formal. But as I said, right, you can't convey tone very well in an email or in an instant message. And so a tip that I've been reading recently, which I really, really agree with, is go crazy with the emojis, right? If you're talking to a client, like, keep it in check a little bit. But if you're communicating internally, and you want to, especially as a manager, you want to let your team know that they did a great job, don't hold back. Like, send them, the high five and the girl cartwheeling and the fire emoji and everything that's, these pictures convey more than we can in words. So just look for ways to, bolster your nonverbal communication while we're all stuck from behind our desk.
Yeah. I think we're big, like, okay, I don't want to go into a rabbit hole, but GIF, I don't know what you want to call it.
I guess
We're big GIF.
Animated images.
Yes.
We are animated image users at Impulse, and I am personally, because I feel like sometimes those create more emotion and can really 100% get across how you're feeling without having to use your words at all. And that's like another form of technology we can lean into.
Yeah, I agree. And then I don't know if you guys do this over at Impulse, but one thing I love is using, getting creative with these virtual technologies. So mimicking certain office rhythms, right? So if you're used to having like a water cooler conversation with your friend, on Mondays and catching up, just connect with that person by video conference for a couple minutes, right? If you're used to having a couple beers after work on Friday, with a few of your work friends, cool, just do it. Like sit at your desk, have a beer, chit chat, just try to mimic what you can. And that'll, make us all feel a little bit more connected while we're, socially distanced.
One of the tips that you made, I would like for you to maybe address from like a getting on stage speaking perspective that, and we like raved about it, and like there were two of them that we like spun off and totally spiraled out on just before we got on the call with you, is that getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think like as women, we've talked about like how we give and receive feedback and how we internalize things, and we just like react to things differently sometimes than our male colleagues do. But from like a getting on stage perspective, if you will, how can we kind of parlay that tip into, we're putting our plan together, we're listening, we're strategizing, we have a message. It's like, okay, now what?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. And I can't take credit for this tip of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, but it's one of my favorites. One of my mentors, Dan Tyre at HubSpot, shared this with me. And the idea is that, right, you can do all the strategizing that you want. But the reality is that when you get up on stage, whether that's a physical stage or a virtual stage, like a video platform, you're probably not going to feel 100% comfortable. Like that's just human instinct, is to have this nervousness or this excitement inside of you. And so, embracing that feeling of being uncomfortable and recognizing that as excitement, I feel like is the best way to get through that. And, what a great time to adapt or to adopt that mantra, right? It's uncomfortable right now. I don't think there's many people in the world right now who can say, yeah, I'm 100% comfortable with everything that's going on. This is terrific. So just kind of accepting that and knowing that it's okay and it's natural to feel uncomfortable can really help you kind of push through and just keep putting your message out there, can inspire you to have confidence in what you know, and then, just allows you, to push and get your message out there and then work on improving it later.
I love that. And then the other one that Remington, our boss, will say to me and other colleagues all the time is imposter syndrome. And I think that as we begin to be these empowered females who are like, I'm going to shout my message from the rooftop, right? Well, my first thought is always like, who the hell am I? Like, and I say this because I do these weekly videos and then I'll stop because I'm like, I don't have anything to say, or I don't feel like what I'm saying is resonating, or whatever that might be. And this is the first thing Remington will say to me is like, get out of your own way. This is imposter syndrome. And so how have you personally worked through that in getting on stage yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny, right, that we all go through that. And I think for me, that's what it took, was just understanding that it's not just me, because that's how it tends to go. I go through this on a very regular rhythm. I go from being, this is in times of non-crisis, on top of the world, the agency got a new award, like, this is awesome, it's the year of the woman, to being like, I'm just a little girl and I know so little, and like, how there's so much to know, like, how could I know all these things? And that's just a natural part of it. I think knowing that everyone goes through that is comforting. And then it really comes down to just having confidence in what you know, right? And if you don't have that confidence, go out there and educate yourself, right? There's nothing that holds you back at this point. There's just so many free educational resources out there. And what I find too is when I actually get a message out, then I kind of get feedback about it, and that validates me a little bit, because I get into this loop where I think like, well, my old boss already knows all of this stuff. They're not going to be here. Well, my old creative director, like, he knows all this stuff. What's he going to think when he sees me sharing these basic tips? But then I get folks who aren't in the industry, or, aren't a creative director, and they come up to me and they say, Megan, thank you so much for these practical tips. That was so helpful. And so knowing that you're not going to impress everyone, like, you don't need for everyone out there to love you and revere you as an expert. You just need your fans, right? And if you have true fans that genuinely, are into and are learning from what you're sharing, that's who you should be caring about. So yeah, imposter syndrome is real. I think all people, and particularly women, go through it at all different levels. So if you're going through it, realize that it's a normal, natural thing. Talk to your friends, right? Talk to your colleagues. They'll help bolster your confidence. And just keep putting stuff out there, and getting some feedback.
Megan, what I'm loving having you live on our podcast today is that I can really get a sense for how you communicate, how you are offering information and conversation, and a little bit of your personal brand is coming through in that, right? And I love seeing that. How can people make sure they're doing that when they're sharing, especially if maybe they're sharing writing, maybe they're sharing a photo, or just like a point in time video? They don't have the conversation two-way aspect to it.
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that I lean into is just this idea of being authentic. And that's kind of by accident, because I don't really, like, that's just how I am. I don't have much of a poker face, and so I think being authentic in your communication is probably the best way to get your message out there, So if you're a silly person that likes to, make jokes and be witty and, I don't just have a lot of personality, put that out there. Use caps, use punctuation, make your video all about that. I think just being comfortable with, who you are, and talking to folks like you know them, and, like I've said, having the confidence to know that you do have value in what you're providing. I think that helps. Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad to hear that, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I've been on video, right, for a few years. And so I think I have a little bit of a leg up on folks that are getting new to it. But I think, practice and practice again. I've had my husband, I've recorded, especially when I first started doing some thought leadership videos, I would record, no joke, like 20 takes before I would put something out that was maybe like 2 minutes long. And I would work with, my husband who's in the industry, but also folks who are outside the industry, like my sister, to say like, hey, do I seem like a nice, interesting person? And she'd be like, well, you seem a little flat here. Lex would say, my husband would say, like, Megan, you sound like, corporate video right now, like, just be yourself. So I got some feedback, from those that I love and I trust. And that's really kind of helped coach me a little bit to kind of get my more authentic message out there.
I love that. It sounds like you and your husband have a really good working relationship, which is it's very impressive to me because I have not always seen that in my life. What are your tips for folks who maybe aren't owning a business and working directly with their spouse or partner right now, but working in the same physical space right now and making that work productively for them, not holding them back? I think
Sure.
that's
it's so interesting. Like my husband and I were in this really unique space, right? Working together at home. and no one really was interested in it. And now all of a sudden everybody's in that same boat. So, some things that have worked for us are making sure that you appropriately break out home time and work time by any means necessary, right? So use your calendar if it makes sense to block when you're working and when you're not working. My husband and I would get into these bad rhythms, particularly around lunchtime. He generally works downstairs and I work upstairs, and I would go downstairs and I'm on my lunch, I'm just chit-chatting and sharing some ideas I had about, arts and crafts projects and, like yard work. And he would be like, I'm working, what are you doing? So just kind of communicating, when you're at work and when you're not, I think is a great first step. And then, having some designated workspaces really helps too. We tried sharing office space for a little while. It didn't go as well as we thought it might. So we've kind of split our workspaces. And then, so many people are in this crazy situation now of having kids at home too. I know, Jackie, you're in that boat. That really adds a whole nother layer of complexity. So, there's all kinds of good articles out there about, working from home in this crisis and how to manage, your family and your spouse and your child. But I think just stay as communicative as you can with your partner. Make sure that, they can get what they need and you can get what you need. And your partners for a reason, right? Like you can probably figure it out if you work together. The other thing too I recommend is don't be afraid to hang out separately at night, like outside of work. Like it's okay if you go watch your show in one room and like he watches his show, he or she watches their show, in another room. That's okay. You guys don't have to be together 24/7 now that everybody's locked in the same house,
I appreciate the permission for privacy.
Right.
It's extra.
Yeah, it can be a lot, but the tips that everyone's giving, right? Get outside as much as you can, within the regulations of where you live. The weather, at least where we are, in the Midwest and the Northeast, is starting to turn a little bit. So get some fresh air, get some exercise. Yeah, it's a tough time, but hopefully we can all get through it together.
And, as you said, Megan, like I do have a daughter at home, and my husband doesn't normally work from home. He's in our basement. We set him up an area, like a private space, like you said. But I'm also trying to like lean into this a little bit. The last time I spent this much time with both my husband and my daughter was when she was a week old. Mm-hmm. And so like, I'm trying to lean into it that way, that like, there are things that we're getting to do. Like, and I saw another article, you said there are great ones out there, but like, it was almost, I think it was just like a meme that was like, when your kids in 20 years look back at this time, they're going to remember that you had family dinner together every night. That's not something we did in this house because my husband's hours didn't coordinate with my young daughter's dinner time, right? Mm-hmm. So there are things that I'm hoping she remembers from this and I remember from this that weren't normal for us. Like the simple thing like a family dinner or, taking our dog for a walk, all of us at the same time, that we only got to do on the weekends occasionally. So from the same exact aspect of like communication and making it work, it's almost like, how can we lean into what we're doing right now and appreciate some of these like really small things that maybe we're frustrated about, but like, how can we flip the script on that and appreciate them?
I think that's a great point, right? Is in all of this, you can, each of us has to some extent some control over how we feel, right? And it's very easy to become overwhelmed and downtrodden about the terrible headlines and all of that. But the silver linings are there, right? There is this unique opportunity, this permission almost to get close to your family and spend time with, your tribe. And so I liken it to what people say about, when you have like a very, very small child, like an infant, like appreciate the time, even though it's hard, even though it's going to fly by in an instant, just appreciate it because you're never going to get it back, right? Particularly with your kids and even with your partner, with your parents or with your sister, with all of your loved ones, our time is limited. And so spend some time, connecting with them and really appreciate it. So I think you're right that, my stepdaughter's in the same boat. she doesn't read the headlines. Like, she's gonna remember she got to do lessons at home with us for school. She's super excited about it, you know? And so like watching her joy, you know, kind of helps us realize that, you know, it could be worse, right?
Do you have any tips around inviting feedback from other people? I've heard you say that multiple times. That's been a revolutionary way for you to learn and transform. Yeah. Yeah. So because it can be so scary, what are some ways that you invite that?
So, you know, I think one hindrance for me when everything is, you know, normal out in the world is I don't want to burden people, right? Like, I don't want to bother my sister or my mom or my friend, you know, because people all have their busy lives. And I feel like right now in particular, you know, this is a great time to establish some channels for feedback because everyone has a lot of extra time. And so you can even frame your request like, hey, since we're all sitting around at home, you know, with extra time on our hands, would you have any interest in, you know, reviewing some video footage that I've been working on? You know, I'm trying to elevate my career and, you know, use this time to improve myself. And I feel like you'll find generally that people are really open to it. On the other side of that, right, you have to yourself be in the right state of mind to receive feedback, particularly when it's constructive. When the feedback is you're amazing, you know, you should be a star, you can take that whenever. But when you really get some constructive feedback to help you improve, I find that I need to be in a good state of mind to do that. So I'll kind of clear some time, you know, to read their email or take a phone call on like a Saturday morning, you know, rather than like at the end of the day on Tuesday after I've gotten out of a stressful meeting. So doing that, you know, asking, finding the right time. And then I think a good tip too is it can be tough to find people to give feedback that are experts in what you're talking about. So have confidence in the actual subject matter that you're talking about, but you can rely on others to give you feedback on non-subject matter type things like your volume and your delivery and your nonverbal communication and, you know, did you smile enough or use your hands enough and things like that. So, you know, put your stuff out to a group of people that you trust. Let them know that it's a safe space, that you genuinely want the feedback, and then kind of see what comes back. And then, I mean, I think the most important thing with feedback always, right, is that you incorporate it. Like, getting feedback is great, but actually take the feedback to heart, you know, realize that you've asked for it and this is stuff that can help you improve, and then re-record, you know, send it over, see what they think. And then when everybody's feeling comfortable, you know, you're ready to get that message out there.
And that's great. And now is the perfect time, like you said, with all this extra time we have on our hands to actually strategize around that. Maybe like pull out the notes that you have on that and say, okay, what are some practical things I can do to apply these lessons I've learned from people? Or what can I do to siphon through like the shit right now? Like, this doesn't really apply. You know, I appreciate it, but it doesn't apply.
Right, exactly. You know, it goes back to, you know, you can't please everyone. Like, if you know, if you put your video out, you know, even for feedback to 100 people, you're not going to get 100 people that say it was amazing. Like, it's just never going to happen. And so, you know, recognizing that not everyone's going to love you is a tough lesson, but it's necessary if you want to, you know, pursue and just keep getting stuff out there and really start to build a personal brand for yourself.
Do you have a preferred platform where you're standing up, where we can push people to go and follow you?
Yeah, so my preferred platform is probably LinkedIn. LinkedIn tends to be a bit more B2B, and I find that, you know, I try to save Facebook, for instance, for more personal things. So yeah, if folks want to go out and follow me on LinkedIn, I do put some content out there. You know, I'm in the same boat as everyone else. I recognize the opportunity, but it can feel tough to find some mental clarity right now, for sure. So I kind of just ride my own personal wave of emotion, right? And it can be a nice distraction, honestly, that if you're feeling overwhelmed and you can't get off your phone and reading the headlines, take a deep breath, go for a walk, and just go heads down for a couple hours, you know, and figure out how to evolve your personal brand and turn this crisis into something positive.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time
to talk with
us and share all this amazing information. And I know this is something I'm personally going to be leveraging and utilizing as I keep creating content for myself and Impulse. So Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you.
And we, we really just appreciate you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been great. Same to you all. Stay healthy, stay safe, and just hang in there. We're all in this together. It'll get better soon.
Sadly, that'll do it for this week's episode of Maiden Voyage. We'd like to thank you, our amazing listeners, because let's face it, lady life is hard. It's incredible how much we accomplish every day, and we all deserve awards just for existing. If you're watching the show, make sure that you subscribe, click on that thing for instant notifications, speak your mind in the comments, and share us with your fellow Voyagers.